Yeah, you guys, in this tutorial, I will be laying Tammy Taylor's Whitest White acrylic on all 10 toes, and on both big toes, laying a glitter acrylic as well to create the look as if it sits inside the white acrylic. Go ahead and disinfect the feet with alcohol, and then etch all 10 toes, ridding all of them from any oils. And of course, while filing the toes, you want to make sure that you do not get your oils from your fingers back onto the toenail. If there is any oil on the nail bed, prior to the acrylic being laid, the acrylic will lift. I'm using an 80/80 grit file, which is a rougher file. And then of course dust it to get all the dust off of it. And then buff all of the toes. I'm going to be doing just this 1 foot. Or rather, 1 foot at a time in this tutorial. But we all have different methods and different reasons why we do what we do. So if you are doing all 10 toes at once, then of course go ahead and buff them all. That's to create a smoothness on the toenail prior to laying the acrylic, so that the acrylic moves better on top of the toenail. You will want to prime them. Try not to get your brush on the skin, because again, this step is to not have any oil put back on the nail bed once you have etched it. I always will wipe the primer brush onto a towel before I put it back into the primer bottle. Okay, now I'm putting the second coat of primer on it prior to laying the white acrylic. And the balls of acrylic that go on the smaller toes, you will want it to have enough liquid in it so that you can still move it and shape it into the shape that you're wanting it to be. If it has not enough liquid, of course, then you're not going to be able to move it once it's laid. And I always go around the cuticles and the sides to make sure and ensure that there is no acrylic laying on top of the cuticle or the skin. Some people place cotton balls in between the toes if they need to be separated, but this client doesn't need cotton balls. If you're a beginner and still have not achieved and how to know how much liquid to have in your brush, and you lay the ball of acrylic on the toenail, if you have too much liquid in your brush, just go ahead and wipe it off and start over instead of trying to pat it and move it. Then of course I'll go up underneath the toenails once I've got it to the desired shape, just so that there is no excess acrylic underneath the toenail. We want acrylic toes to look as natural as possible, so we do not want them to be thick at all. I like to lay my acrylics so that I do not have to file that much at the end, so you will be able to see at the end there's not that much filing. Going to prime the big toe the second time so that the primer is wet prior to laying the acrylic. And when placing the glitter acrylic to look as if it trickles through the white acrylic, you lay the glitter acrylic first in whichever corner you want to start from. Of course, if you're left or right-handed, will decipher which feels most comfortable for you. But you will want to create a well. You do not want the glitter acrylic to be flush with the toenail. We want it to sit up some. So create the well for the white acrylic to sit in. I'm laying the glitter acrylic and we'll be laying the white acrylic to extend some past the client's natural nail. I want all the toenails to be square and at the tip of the toenail. So there will be 2 balls of white acrylic that go on opposite sides of that glitter acrylic. If you happen to have too much liquid in your brush and get white acrylic over some of the glitter, don't spaz, because you can at the end file that off when you're filing the finished laid acrylic. Again, always go back around the cuticle to get that excess liquid and acrylic off of the cuticle. And then of course we have to allow the acrylic to dry before we file them. Starting on the second foot, it's already been etched, so I'm buffing the top of the toenails prior to laying the white acrylic, of course. And then dust it off. Prior to put your primer, the first coat of primer of Tammy Taylor's primer has to dry before you lay the second coat. The second coat, of course, has to be wet prior to laying the acrylic. Again, your balls of acrylic will need enough liquid in them to be able to move the acrylic and not dry before you get it moved in the shape that you're wanting it. You don't want a lot of acrylic up underneath the toenail if you're extending it from the natural nail. So, of course, when laying your balls of acrylic on your toenails, you will want to take the brush and go underneath the ends of them once you've extended it. Second coat of primer. There's a number of reasons why people get acrylic on their toes. You do not have to have messed up feet to feel as if you need acrylic on your toes. There's a lot of us that have had our toenails surgically removed or never have had a pinky toenail grow. And if you can put acrylic on that client's toenail and give them a toenail, you will have that client for life. There's a lot of us walking around not wearing sandals because of what we think of our toenails. Laying the glitter acrylic to create that well on both sides for the white to be laid. The glitter acrylic is mixed with Tammy Taylor's Clear acrylic, And I've just put my own glitter inside her clear acrylic. Primer again. I'll only do that a third time if I know my client will typically lift after 2 weeks. I want to ensure that they do not lift. Acrylic toes will last my clients 4 to 6 weeks before they need to come in for a fill-in. First follow white acrylic, the tip, go underneath, make sure there's no acrylic underneath. And then the second wall, that's by the cuticle. Attempting to show you from all angles. Go ahead and finish laying the white acrylic on the rest of the toenails before we allow the acrylic to dry before we file them. That you've got all of them laid, we've got to allow them to dry so we can file and buff them. So I'm going to go ahead and file all 10. I'll go ahead and buff this foot instead of doing all of them together. Go ahead and buff it smooth. Dust it before putting the oil, the cuticle oil on. The cuticle oil always brings and livens up the glitter whenever it's laid. Now I'm taking a cotton ball with acetone on the cotton ball to rid the oil from the top of the acrylic prior to laying the top coat. Now to apply the top coat. These are all pictures or glances of the finished product. I've extended the acrylic a little bit past the client's natural toenails to create all of them to have the square look and same length. Again, this set will not need a fill-in for at least 4 weeks to 6 weeks.